Sophie Cunningham just got left off the All-Star three-point contest list. Second best percentage in the entire league this year. And somehow she's not one of the 6 names picked. And Caitlin Clark, her closest friend on the Indiana Fever, just did something about it and breaking her silence about the incident. Not a tweet, not a quote in some article. Something that's already got the whole league talking. And soon enough, you'll understand why Caitlin Clark finally couldn't stay quiet. Why did the WNBA snub music Sophie Cunningham? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. On baseline, 2 seconds. 1 second. Cunningham heads. Screaming. Now he could have dribbled it out. Didn't secure it. Cunningham gets hit at the end of this third quarter. Oh, Cunningham from the hash mark. Yes, ma'am. Sophie Cunningham saying, Caitlin Clark, you going to sing for us? You don't want that. Cunningham drills it. How do you build a three-point contest and leave out one of the best shooters alive? That's the question nobody at the WNBA seems willing to answer. Sophie Cunningham is shooting close to 44% from 3 this season. That's second in the entire league behind almost nobody. And it's not some fluke stretch of 5 good games. It's a full season of numbers that most shooters dream about and never touch. Now, stack that against the 6 players the league actually picked for the contest to go look at their percentages. Some are shooting in the mid-30s. 1 or 2 are up near 38, maybe 39% if you're being generous with the rounding. Nobody in that group of 6 is shooting anywhere close to what Cunningham is doing on a nightly basis. So, if the entire point of a three-point contest is finding out who can actually shoot, somebody forgot to check the stat sheet before making the calls. And it's not just one hot season either. Look at the last 2 years combined. And Cunningham has the best three-point percentage in the whole league. Not top 5, not top 3. Number 1, over a 2-year sample, which is a big enough window that you can't call it luck or a heater. That's just who she is as a shooter right now, and the numbers have receipts going back 2 full seasons. A three-point contest exists for one reason, to find out who can shoot the ball better than everybody else in the building. That's it. That's the whole premise. You don't get invited because you're popular. You get invited because you can catch and shoot from 22 foot better than the other 179 players in the league. So, when you actually run the math on who qualifies, Cunningham isn't just a name that could have been included. She's a music name that should be favored to win the whole thing. Clark now with it. Clark kicks it. Cunningham pump fake side deep 3. Sophie cheering. Cunningham hits. Raven Johnson's going a little too early here. Shot clock is turned off. Finds Cunningham. Her 3 is good. Cunningham deep 3. Got it. Her second of the ball game. Then a minute to go here in the third quarter. Feeling it. So, what's left to explain the snub if it's not about talent? Because the numbers don't lie, and the numbers, say Cunningham belongs in that field over at least half the players who got the invite instead. You start running out of basketball reasons pretty fast. And that's when you start wondering if this was ever about basketball to begin with. And Cunningham isn't the only name from Indiana getting skipped over here. Aaliyah Boston shoots a clean stroke from the perimeter for a post player. Numbers that would make most bigs jealous. And she didn't make the cut either, despite actually leading the league in three-point percentage. Kelsey Mitchell, who's been one of the most consistent scorers in this league for years now and also top 6 in this year's three-point percentage with a jumper that's money from 3 whenever she's given the space, also isn't on the list. 2 more elite shooters, same team, same result, left out. So now you've got 3 players from one roster, all shooting at an elite level, all in the top 6 in terms of three-point efficiency, all absent from a contest built around exactly that skill. That's not one weird decision you can chalk up to a coincidence or a scheduling issue. That's a pattern. And patterns don't happen by accident when the stat sheet says otherwise. 3 shooters this good, all skipped over, all from the same team, and nobody in the league office has a stat-based explanation for how that happens. Because if it's not about who can actually shoot the ball, then something else decided this list. And that music leaves one option nobody at the league wants to say out loud. Maybe this was never about finding the best shooters at all. Maybe it's about which players the league wants standing in that spotlight and which ones it would rather keep off the biggest stage of the summer. Cutting hands beat those extra effort. Cunningham will bring you closer together. Cunningham feeling it. We don't want that. Cunningham. All-Star Weekend is supposed to reward the season you are having. Music. Play well enough, shoot well enough, show up on the stat sheet enough times, and you get your spot. That's the idea anyway. But the 6-player field for this 3-point contest didn't come from some clean formula anybody can point to. Coaches vote, league officials weigh in, and there's a media component mixed in there too. Which means popularity and storylines get a say right alongside shooting splits. So, the second you let anything other than stats into the room, you open the door for exactly this kind of outcome. And fans have watched this pattern for 2 years running now. Fever players keep getting skipped for the bigger moments, even as the ratings and the attention around this team keep climbing every single month. Clark got left off early season awards conversations this year despite numbers that would have made the cut in any other season. Cunningham herself got buried in national broadcasts even during games where she was the reason the Fever were still in it. Fans remember these things. Music. They bring them up constantly in comment sections and group chats because the pattern isn't subtle once you start counting the examples side by side. Now put that next to the actual viewership. Fever games this season are drawing crowds that other matchups can only dream about. Selling out arenas on the road, breaking merchandise records, pulling in casual fans who never watched a WNBA game before Clark showed up. This is a team driving actual money into the league night after night. And yet somehow it's the same team getting skipped for the moments that would put even more eyes on the product. That's not a small gap. That's a direct contradiction between what the numbers say, music, and what the invite list says. So, you have to ask the obvious question. Is the league scared this roster gets too big for the room? Because a Fever team this popular, sweeping a shooting contest or dominating an all-star moment changes who gets to stand in the spotlight. And maybe that's not a trade some people upstairs are ready to make. Because that's the real split here. Talent isn't deciding who gets the spotlight and who doesn't. Something else is making that call. Music. Some mix of who the league wants front and center and who it would rather keep in the background regardless of the stat sheet. And once you see that pattern, you can't unsee it in every one of these decisions. So look at that 6-player contest music field again, and it stops looking like a merit list. It starts looking music, like a guest list built for the names the league already wanted standing under those lights with the shooting numbers used as an afterthought instead of the actual reason for the invite. Cunningham being left off isn't a one-time oversight. It's a preview of a much messier situation because the snub wasn't even the worst thing that happened to her this year. I'm Sophie Music Cunningham. Do you know what was going through my mind at that moment? It all started when my teammate Caitlin Clark got shoved by Dana Bonner while playing defense, music. And the two got into an argument. Watch the replay. It was clearly a foul by Bonner, but the referees gave Caitlin a technical foul instead. So I walked over and said to the officials, Caitlin got called, but why didn't Bonner? Music. If Caitlin gets a tech, then Bonner should get one, too. You can't call just one. While I was talking, I was pointing at Bonner. I never expected that gesture to make her so angry. She kept telling me to stop pointing at her. And that's when I did that stupid pointing music gesture. Everybody already knows the moment. Cunningham turned toward Dana Bonner after Bonner's dust-up with Clark earlier this year and threw up that point right in her direction. It lasted maybe 10 seconds on the broadcast, but 10 seconds was all it took to turn into one of the biggest storylines of the Fever season. Replayed on every highlight show and clipped music into 1,000 different versions online within hours. I didn't say a single word. I just couldn't help myself. She was losing her mind and all I was doing was pointing at her. Then, while she was at the free throw line and missed the shot, I did the same stupid gesture again. I honestly couldn't control myself. I never imagined that moment would explode all over the internet, cause such a huge reaction, and eventually become the now viral pointing me. Now, do you understand? Do you think what I did was stupid? That gesture didn't just go viral once and fade out like most moments do. It turned into memes stacked, music, on memes. It got featured during a UFC broadcast and it basically became shorthand for Cunningham's whole personality on the court. Fans started doing the point themselves at bars, at youth games, in group chats as a reaction to literally anything. It wasn't just a celebration anymore. It became a piece of who she is as a player. The kind of signature move that usually takes years to build. And she built it in one clip. Then the WNBA Players Association stepped in and labeled the gesture derogatory, blocking it from official league licensing, so no jerseys with the pose, no official merchandise built around it. Nothing through league channels that would put money in her pocket off the back of the exact moment that made her more famous than she's ever been. A gesture that took over the internet for weeks got shut out of the one place that could have turned it into actual business. Now compare that to what happens on the court every single night without a second glance from the league office. Players talk trash face to face after tough buckets, get in each other's space after, and ones throw up their own celebrations that are a lot more pointed than a finger aimed across the music court. None of that gets fined. None of that gets banned. None of that turns into a league memo about protecting the image of the game. You don't have to look far for examples either. Veteran players have said far worse in the heat of a game, chirping at rookies, getting into shouting matches at the free throw line, and the league music lets it slide as part of the competitive fire that makes the product good. Gestures toward opposing benches happen constantly, and nobody's writing policy over it. So when Cunningham does one specific point at one specific player and that's the moment the league decides needs a rule, you have to wonder what actually separates it from everything else that goes unpunished. Because nothing about the gesture itself is more aggressive than half the stuff that happens under the basket on any given night. The real difference isn't the gesture. It's who did it and how big it got and how fast it turned into something bigger than the league wanted to deal with. Here's where it gets almost funny though. Cunningham can still make money off the moment on her own through her own deals, her own merchandise, her own name, and image rights outside of league control. The league just won't let it happen through their official channels. So, the ban doesn't actually stop the moment from making money. It just makes sure the league isn't the one benefiting from it or standing next to it publicly. And that's the real irony sitting underneath this whole music thing. The league won't put Cunningham in the spotlight through the All-Star contest. Music. And now it won't let her control the one moment that made her a star on her own terms either. You can't have it both ways. Ignore the talent and then police the personality. Unless the real goal was never protecting the game at all, it was about deciding who gets to have a personality on that court and who has to stay quiet enough not to become a bigger name than the league is comfortable with. Both hits landed in the same stretch of days. The snub came out first. The contest field got announced. Her name wasn't on it. And before fans even finished arguing about that, word came down about the ban on her point celebration, too. 2 gut punches in music. Less than a week. Both aimed at the same player. Both landing in public where every fan and every reporter could see it happen in real time. Cunningham's response wasn't some long statement or a press conference. It was a tweet, short and sarcastic, basically saying, "So, what else is new?" That's it. No anger in the wording, no plea for fairness, just a shrug dressed up as a joke. The kind of line you write when you've seen this movie before, and you already know how it ends, because that's what she meant by nothing new. This wasn't the first time Cunningham got skipped for something she'd clearly earned. And fans didn't need her to spell it out because they'd already been keeping their own list. They bring up the times she got buried on the bench in broadcast coverage despite big performances. The times her role on this team got undersold while other players got the headlines off her setup work. Add the snub and the ban together and you've got a pattern stretching back way further than one bad week music in the same season. What made the moment land even harder was the contrast. Cunningham stayed calm, almost amused by the whole thing, while fans in her replies were furious on her behalf, dropping the actual stats, tagging the league office, asking how a top 2 three-point shooter misses a shooting contest field. She didn't need to be angry because her fans were doing that part for her. And that gap between her tone and theirs made the moment even bigger than a normal call-out post would have been. And that's exactly why the response worked so well. Cunningham came across as someone who already knows her own value, someone who doesn't need 6 league officials to confirm what the stat sheet already says. That kind of confidence reads as likable because it's not manufactured. It's not performative. It's just a player who's used to being overlooked and has stopped waiting on anyone's permission to feel good about her game. Teammates jumped into the replies, too, and the flood of comments turned into something bigger than one player's bad week. Fans kept quoting her numbers next to the 6 players who made the cut, comparing shooting splits line by line, and the whole thread turned into a public audit of the league's own decision. Nobody from the league office jumped in to explain anything, which only made the silence louder with every hour that passed. So now the question sitting in front of everyone is simple. Does the league actually address this, or does it just let the moment pass and hope the story dies down on its own? Silence has worked before for the league in moments, music, like this. But the gap between Cunningham's numbers and her exclusion is too obvious to just disappear into a music news cycle. Because Cunningham never once asked anyone to feel bad for her. She let the timeline do the talking. The music, snub, then the ban, both landing in the same week. Both lining up right next to the numbers that make the whole thing look worse the longer you sit with it. And while all of this played out online, somebody else was watching every single reply, every quote tweet, every fan defending Cunningham's name, and she was getting ready to say something of her own. For days, Clark said nothing. Not a tweet, music, not a quote to reporters, not even a passing comment in a post-game interview when someone tried to bait her into it. Anyone who's followed her career knows that's normal. Clark picks her spots. She doesn't chase headlines, and she almost never makes herself the story when a teammate is the one getting hit. So, the silence wasn't surprising by itself. It's what fans expected from her. But the waiting still built up week after week. Fans kept refreshing her social media, kept asking reporters at every Fever press conference if she had a reaction, kept wondering out loud if she'd let this one slide the way she's let other things slide before. Some assumed she'd stay quiet the whole way through because that's just who music she's been since college. Others figured if anything was going to break that pattern, it would have to be something bigger than a tweet. And that's exactly what happened. Clark had her own invitation to the three-point contest. She turned it down. That's the headline sitting underneath everything music else this week. And it's the kind of move that doesn't need extra spin to land hard. Her reasoning was simple and it cut right to the point. The contest, music, would be boring without Cunningham in the field. Not I'm hurt, not scheduling conflict, not some vague statement about needing rest. She said the quiet part out loud that a shooting contest missing one of the best shooters in the league, music, isn't worth her time either. That single decision carries more weight than any tweet could have carried because, music, tweets cost nothing, and this cost her a spot on one of the biggest stages of the summer. Clark had a guaranteed spotlight moment. Guaranteed cameras, guaranteed clips running on every highlight show for days. And she walked away from all of it over a principle. That's not a comment section reaction. That's a player using her own name to make a point the league can't just scroll past. Compare that to how these situations usually go. Most stars who get snubbed music, or watch a teammate get snubbed, post something polite and vague about staying focused on the game, then move on because rocking the boat music isn't worth the headache. Nobody wants to be the player picking fights with league management in a public way. Clark skipped all of that and went straight to the one move that actually cost the league something. Music. An empty chair where a star was supposed to sit. And she wasn't the only one. Kayla McBride and Sabrina Ionescu reportedly turned down their invitations. Music, too. Which means this isn't just Clark going out on a limb by herself. 3 players stepping back from the same contest in the same stretch of days. Music turns one protest into a pattern the league has to explain. not just brush off as one player being upset about her friend. Because now the empty spot in that contest field says, music, more than a full one ever could. Every camera at All-Star Weekend is going to notice who isn't standing there. And every broadcast is going to have to address why 3 names pulled out around the same controversy. That's a bigger story than the contest itself was ever going to be. Snub and all. Clark didn't just stand up for her friend here. She used the one thing the league actually cares about, star power and ratings, and pulled it back just enough to make her point stick. And now the league has to answer for it in public, heading into an All-Star Weekend that's supposed to be a celebration, not a referendum on how Cunningham got treated all year. Cunningham doesn't need 6 league officials or a trophy to prove she can shoot. The stat sheet already said it, and Clark just made sure nobody could look away from it either. The Fever keep getting managed instead of promoted, buried instead of pushed forward, and every single time it backfires louder than the last snub did. Fans see it, players see it, and now the empty chair at All-Star Weekend music says it too. 2026 isn't about Indiana asking for a seat anymore. Music. It's about walking in and taking one, whether the league wants to hand it over or not. Why did the WNBA snub Sophie Cunningham? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on all notifications as we're bringing you all the action and top stories. Click the video on the screen and we'll see you in the next.